Okay, I want to start today with a question that, on the surface, sounds like it belongs on a dating app. But in the context of our source material, it's terrifyingly huge. The question is simply, with whom shall I live?
That sounds simple enough, right? Like, are you looking for a roommate?
Yeah, someone who does the dishes, or, a partner who likes the same movies.
But that's not what we're talking about.
Not even close. We are doing a deep dive into a speech from back in February 1983. It was delivered by Reverend and Son Myung, and it's titled, appropriately, With Whom Shall I Live? And the who in that sentence isn't just a buddy, it's all about finding a true person.
And that concept, the true person, is really the anchor for everything else we're going to talk about today. This speech, it covers so much ground. It starts with the individual I, then goes to the family, expands to the nation, and then eventually it asks who God wants to live with.
It's a massive scope, and honestly, reading through it, I felt like I was getting whiplash in a good way. One minute, we're doing this deep linguistic analysis of Chinese characters, then we're into this incredibly specific geopolitical strategy with Germany and Japan, and then suddenly we're talking about the speaker's underwear.
Ah, yes, the famous underwear anecdote. We will definitely get to that.
We have to. But let's start at the beginning. The whole premise here is that everyone is searching. Individuals, nations, even God. We are all looking for this true person to partner with. Now, being 1983, I expected some pretty traditional definitions, but the first thing he does is make a pun to tell us who a true man is not.
Right. He says a true man is not Harry S. Truman.
Which, I admit, it made me laugh.
It-
But he's not just doing it for the pun, is he? He seems to have a real bone to pick with Truman.
He does. And this gives us a little bit of insight into his worldview. He specifically criticizes Truman for firing General Douglas MacArthur during the Korean War. In the speaker's view, that was a massive failure of leadership that caused immense suffering for what he calls the free world.
Hmm.
So he was basically establishing that, political power or historical fame doesn't make you a true person.
Okay, so if it's not the guy who drops the bomb or fires the general, what is it? Because the definition he pivots to is, well, it's a lot harder than being president.
It is. It's the core of his whole philosophy. A true person is someone who lives for the sake of others. But he adds a nuance here that I think is really crucial. It's about initiative. You don't wait to be served. You don't wait for someone to see your value. You take the first step to serve them.
He uses this example with siblings that I found really grounding. Parents bring home a bag of clothes for the kids. The false brother is the one digging through the bag trying to find the coolest shirt before anyone else can get it.
And the true brother is the one saying, you guys choose first. I'll take whatever is left. It's about creating harmony by voluntarily taking that lower position.
That sounds nice in theory. I mean, we all want to be that person, that big brother. But then he takes this concept and just cranks the difficulty dial up to 11. It's one thing to let your little sister have the red shirt. It's a whole other thing to deal with an enemy.
And this is where the theology gets really heavy. He defines perfection, the ultimate goal of a true person, as possessing absolute true love. And the only way to prove you have that is if you can love your worst enemy.
And he's not talking about some generic enemy like the guy who annoyed me at work. He uses this very specific, very triggering phrase, the robber of love.
It's such visceral language. He's
Yeah.
talking about someone who invades your home,
Mhm.
someone who commits adultery with your spouse, someone who, in his words, steals your lover. He says this is the enemy that destroys your entire universe.
Right. I think for most people, the reaction to that person is murder, or at least a lawsuit. It's definitely not love.
Exactly. Our instinct is destruction. But the speaker argues that if you destroy that enemy, you haven't really won. You've just perpetuated the cycle. The only way to have a true victory is to love that person, that robber, so intensely, so persistently, that they voluntarily surrender and bow down. They have to realize their own wrongness because of your love.
He even applies this to God, which I found just mind-blowing. He's saying God is in this exact same position.
Yes, he frames Satan not just as a rebel, but as the robber of God's love, the one who stole God's children. So, by his own definition of a true person, God cannot just zap Satan with a lightning bolt. God has to love Satan until Satan surrenders voluntarily.
That just completely flips the script on the classic good versus evil battle. It's
Oh.
not a war of firepower, it's a war of endurance. Which brings us to the next big chunk of this speech, patience.
And this is where we get that linguistic deep dive. He breaks down the Chinese character for patience.
I love this part. It's such a powerful visual. So the character is made of two parts, right?
That's right. The top part of the character is the symbol for sword, and the bottom part is the symbol for mind or heart.
So patience literally means sitting there with a sword dangling over your heart.
Or maybe even burying a sword into your heart without letting it break you. It's a terrifying image.
Mhm.
We think of patience as, waiting in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
He's defining it as this state of active, agonizing endurance. You are holding a blade against your own emotions, your own desire to snap, and you just hold it.
And he contrasts this with the Western mindset. He tells the story about a horse and a rattlesnake that feels like it's straight out of a John Wayne movie.
It's a perfect illustration of, I think, cultural differences in problem solving. He says, in the West, let's say a cowboy's horse gets bitten by a rattlesnake. What does the cowboy do?
Shoots the horse.
Bang.
Put it out of its misery.
Right. It's decisive. It's logical. The horse is hurt. It's going to die. So end the suffering and move on. It's results-oriented. But then he describes the Oriental or Eastern approach.
The rider gets off the horse and cries.
He weeps with the horse. He waits. He massages the leg. He thinks, well, maybe the snake wasn't poisonous. Maybe a miracle will happen. He refuses to give up on that life until the very last second.
So the Westerner looks at that and says, you're wasting time. But the Easterner looks at the Westerner and says, you have no heart.
Precisely. And the speaker is clearly siding with the endurance model. He actually goes on to critique the word okay.
Yeah.
Maybe the most American word there is.
I've never looked at the letters O and K this way before. He says the O is empty.
The O is a zero. It's empty. And the K, he says, you look at the shape of the letter K, it's like a coffee table that's been turned on its side. It's unstable. It wobbles. So OK represents this empty, unstable mindset.
And you contrast that with the Chinese attitude he describes. What was it? Wait and see.
Wait and see. It's the long game. He says the Chinese are prepared to fight, lose, take a break for a year or 10 years, and then just come back. There's no rush to shoot the horse.
And then he gives us the image that I think is going to stick with me for a long, long time, the rotting bottom.
Yes, it is vivid.
It's gross, but he's dead serious. He says you have to be able to sit in one spot for so long that your bottom literally rots and becomes fertilizer.
It's a metaphor for being immovable. If you believe you are right, if you are the true person, you don't move. You endure the pain, that sword in the heart, until your very suffering becomes the fertilizer for something new to grow.
Fertilizer for a new branch. That's the phrase. And that actually sets up his next big metaphor perfectly. He moves from the individual anatomy of patience to the anatomy of the whole world. He describes the world as a tree.
This is the geopolitical section. And you have to remember, this is 1983. The gap between the so-called first world and third world was just stark.
Okay.
So he paints this picture of a tree. At the top, you have the branches and the leaves.
That's the USA, right? The developed West. High up, getting all the sunshine, breathing the fresh air, looking good.
And at the bottom, the roots, buried in the dirt. It's dark, it smells, there are bugs. This represents the underdeveloped nations. He mentions Vietnam, Burma, India specifically.
And the conflict here is that the leaves, the Americans are looking down and saying, you dirt, we don't want anything to do with that.
Right. So what? That's the attitude he critiques. But, the biology of a tree dictates that if the leaves cut themselves off from the roots, the leaves die. The leaves are only beautiful because the roots are down there doing the dirty work.
He has this really ominous warning, too, about a tree floating in the water.
He says a tree without roots in the soil, just floating in the ocean, will eventually be killed by the salt water. And the salt water here seems to represent this secular, harsh environment that won't preserve anything. Without the soil, which he connects to spiritual depth and suffering, the prosperous nations will wither.
So his mission, as he explains it, is a bit of a downer for his followers. He says, I'm not here to make you leaves. I'm here to push you down.
He wants to graft them into the roots. He's telling his American followers, basically, you've had the sunshine, now you need to go down to the bottom into the dirt to save the whole tree.
That is the ultimate buzzkill for anyone who joined a movement hoping for, enlightenment and bliss. He's promising fertilizer duty.
But in his view, that's the only way you can save the world. You have to connect the high branches to the low roots.
Okay, so that brings us to the methodology. How do you actually do that connection? We talked about loving the enemy, but here he introduces a concept called digestion.
Digest your enemy. It sounds almost predatory, doesn't it?
It sounds like something out of a horror movie.
But the meaning is consistent with the whole sword in the heart idea. If you eat food, you don't destroy it, you break it down until it becomes part of your own body. He's saying you need to absorb your enemies until they become part of you.
And he has this wild social experiment to make this happen. He talks about creating a modern-day Noah's family.
This is where we need to bring up the concept of indemnity.
Right. This is a word that comes up a lot in his theology. What exactly does he mean by it in this context?
So indemnity usually means paying for damages, like insurance. In his context, it means paying a spiritual debt to reverse a past failure. He believes that historical enemies have to pay a price of living together to fix what happened in the past.
So he creates these trinities of nations.
Exactly. He wants to form households. Literally, people living under one roof composed of a Korean couple, a Japanese couple, a German couple, and an American couple.
I mean, can you imagine the tension in that house in 1983?
It's huge. Japan occupied Korea for 40 years. The U.S. fought Germany and Japan. These are nations that had been trying to kill each other just a few decades prior.
And he's saying, I'm going to put you in a kitchen together, you figure it out.
That's the digestion. If those four families can unite and become one Noah's family, they pay the indemnity for the world wars. They prove that these enemy nations can actually become brothers.
It's radical integration. It's not just signing a peace treaty. It's sharing a bathroom.
And he mentions that even within his own leadership, he intentionally puts people together who dislike each other. He forces the friction because he believes that friction, if it's endured with that sword in the heart, it creates unity.
Speaking of friction and uncomfortable living situations, we have to talk about the underwear.
I was wondering when you were going to pivot to that.
It's just such a strange detail to include in a sermon about geopolitics and salvation. He tells the audience that he wears the same underwear for a week.
Or turns it inside out to wear it again, yes.
And he makes it really clear. This isn't because he's broke. He's living at East Garden, which is an estate. He has laundry machines.
He says his wife tries to sneak them into the laundry, and he actually fishes them back out.
But why? Is it some kind of penance?
It's solidarity. He explains that he has followers all over the world, fundraisers, missionaries who are living in poverty. Maybe they can't wash their clothes. Maybe they're wearing dirty underwear because they have no choice.
So he wants to feel what they're feeling.
He says he can't be comfortable knowing they're suffering. So he creates a little bit of suffering for himself, the dirty underwear, to stay spiritually connected to them. He says, my mind is with them, so my body must be with them.
It's that root and branch connection all over again. He's the branch refusing to just enjoy the sunshine. He's trying to keep a physical connection to the dirt.
Precisely. It's leading by example, even in the most private, unglamorous way possible.
And speaking of unglamorous, he wraps up with this hypothetical scenario that features President Ronald Reagan. And honestly, I would pay good money to see this movie.
The Reagan in North Dakota scenario.
Yes. He imagines, what if the President of the United States became a Mooney, a disciple of his?
I mean, just the image of Reagan, the ultimate 80s icon, joining this controversial new religious movement is hilarious on its own.
And the speaker says, if Reagan joined, I wouldn't let him stay in the White House. I'd send him to North Dakota.
To be a fundraising commander.
Selling flowers, carnations for $5.
The detail I love here is that he says the flowers themselves would be excited.
Even the flowers would be happy to be sold by a president. It's great.
And he admits Reagan would be amazing at it. People would line up, here's $5, Mr. President. He'd make a fortune for the church.
But then comes the twist. The speaker says, Reagan would be good, but I am senior to him.
And this is the critical insight. Why is the religious leader senior to the president in this hierarchy? It's not about fame. It's about the quality of the suffering.
Because Reagan is fundraising while he's popular.
Right. If everyone loves you, the job is easy. There's no sword in the heart. The speaker points out that he fundraised under persecution. He was chased away, spat on, hated. And he argues that the money raised, or the spiritual value created, while being hated is worth infinitely more than the money raised while being loved.
It goes right back to the true person definition. The true person loves the enemy. If you only love the people who love you, or if you only sell flowers to people who already want to buy them, you haven't achieved that rotting bottom level of victory.
Exactly. He's telling his followers, don't be jealous of the president. Your suffering out in North Dakota, or wherever you are, makes you senior in the eyes of heaven because you're overcoming that negative environment.
It's such a powerful reframing of struggle. It makes the struggle the entire point rather than just an obstacle to get over.
It validates their pain. It tells them that their duty roots position is actually the most important job in the universe.
So let's try to synthesize all of this, because we've covered a lot.
We have.
We started with the search for a true person, someone who doesn't wait to be served but serves first, and who can love the robber of love.
Then we looked at the anatomy of patience, the sword burying into the heart, the refusal to shoot the horse, the willingness to wait until you literally become fertilizer.
Then we zoomed out to the tree, the danger of being a rootless branch, and the necessity of grafting the wealthy nations into the suffering of the developing world.
And then the practical application of it. Digesting your enemies through indemnity. Actually living with the people you hate until they become your family.
It's intense. It really demands a complete inversion of how we normally go through life. We usually try to maximize comfort and minimize conflict, he's saying. Maximize your tolerance for conflict and actively seek out the uncomfortable position.
That's the takeaway from this deep dive. And he leaves the listeners with a challenge at the very end. He asks, can you endure for 10, 20, or 30 years?
That is a long time to sit on a rotting bottom.
It is. But he warns that if you change, if you move, if you snap, you lose everything. True victory, in his view, is the one that lasts forever because it was built on that foundation of absolute unending endurance.
It really forces you to look at your own life, your relationships, your career, your so-called enemies. Are you trying to win the quick showdown? Are you trying to shoot the horse? Or are you willing to wait 30 years for the miracle?
It's a question that certainly puts a traffic jam or a bad roommate into perspective.
It certainly does. Well, on that note, I'm going to go check my laundry.
Just make sure you wash it.
I will. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.